This episode is sponsored by Zenro Clothing Co. Pick up your tees and or accessories at zenroclothingco.com and be sure to use offer code Socrates at checkout for 20% off select items. Also, if you're not into spending the money, just check out the Zenro radio playlist. zenroclothingco.com, music for your everyday. This episode also sponsored by The Pointy Bakery. If you're located in the Pointy area of Scarborough, Toronto, be sure to check out The Pointy Bakery, say what's up to Arville, and pick up a donut or two. Baked daily, crafted with love. This episode also sponsored by Podbean. Podbean is the podcasting platform of choice. It's the one that me and Vish use, and is great. You know, if you're looking to start that DIY podcast yourself, definitely check out Podbean. Use the link podbean.com/SocraticGamers and gain 1 month of unlimited podcasting for free. Test it out, build that content. Anyone could podcast, right, Vish?
Yep.
Start a podcast and get your ideas out there. All right, enjoy the episode. All right, so do you want to start off with the Terrence Howard thing? You saw most of it? You saw the whole thing?
I finished it off during the race, whatever I had left. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Have you seen any deep? All right, so if anybody doesn't know, Terrence Howard going on the Joe Rogan Experience kind of broke the internet because he was talking about like different chemical structures and like basically he was merging science and spirituality, which I do think is going to be the future. Like you see it with like naturopathic doctors, right? They're like taking more Eastern mysticism and applying it towards a Western viewpoint of like scientific method and rigor, right? So it's like there are stuff from the past that we're trying to apply to the present, but it's about that like that filter of like looking at it through the lens of the scientific method. Like, is it double blind placebo? Like, are we able to like
exactly
you repeat this, right? You know what I'm saying? And I was excited because I was like, okay, him going on the Joe Rogan podcast, he really talked about a lot of Eastern things. Like when I was listening to him, I'm like, oh yeah, like this is literally the stuff I've been reading about. They've been tapping into like the flower of life and like I don't know vibrations in ancient like scriptures for a long time. Like the world is vibration, right? And like string theory applies to that. So when I heard about string theory, I'm like, oh, this is basically what they've been saying, right? So what were your impressions before I go into so those were my impressions. I was excited about it, but I couldn't like verify the math. I'm just like, it makes sense, but we need to see how it can be applied. The one thing though is the patents. So when he's like, "Oh, I create these patents," because they don't. I thought they just give them away easily, and then I found out I was like, no, you have to go through because in order to apply for a patent, you have to make it so specific that it's only for you, and that's why you're doing it, right? Or else, if you don't make it, if you make it too general, then they won't grant it to you because, like, let's say Apple is like, "Oh, I'm just gonna patent AI software." It's like, well, what does that mean? You know what I mean? Like you can't control the industry so much. So patents have to be like very scrutinized. Okay. So that was the one thing for me. I was like, okay, you have a lot of patents. You must know some stuff. Is there validity in the other things that you're saying?
So there's different kinds of patents too. Yeah, there's things that will work with science and technology. Those are much more vigor and stuff like that. It has to meet. Then there's also just like design patents, right? Those meet a different level of criteria.
Right. Totally. But it's like you can't just like willy-nilly go do patent stuff. Like there's still some process, right? So it's like, okay, there's a stopgap there. There's like something that's like making sure that you're not just like going off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And that for me was the one good thing. But again, with the science part, I was like, I don't know what you're saying with the periodic table and like the unraveling and like the flower of life. We've looked at the flower of life incorrectly. It doesn't take into account like so when you're looking at things in a 2D plane, the flower of life looks like flat, but then if you make it into a 3D plane, then it changes the flower of
Sure.
life structure. And that's what he's saying is like we've been looking at a 2D in a 2D plane, but it's actually a 4D plane or a 3D plane, right? Um, See that to me, I was like, oh, that's interesting. If that's true, that we're like looking at things in a straight line. Like basically his entire argument was that because we've been looking at things on a 2D plane, like straight lines, we've been confused with the mathematics because nothing in nature is in a vacuum or in 2D space. And that made a lot of sense to me. Because when you're like doing math, you're like, oh, if it was in a vacuum, I'm like, but technically nothing's in a vacuum. That always like got me with like gravity. Like when you're looking at the equations, you're like, but there's other forces acting upon it that you might not even add to the calculation.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? So like, the reason why you can't make 100% probability is because you can't account for all of the forces, right?
Sure.
Like if you like do a probability, like probability mathematics, you can only get up to like 99.999 asymptote percentage. You can never hit 100% because like you can't account for all of the forces,
Mm-hmm.
right? So he's saying that like that's why our math is limited because we're not accounting for these additional forces. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
So logically it makes sense. I'm like, okay, this makes sense to me. Right? So what were your impressions from that? And then I have like this one thing, I don't know if you've seen it yet, the Theories of Everything guy who talked about it.
Mm-hmm.
I sent it to you on IG. I don't think you had time to see it. But when I saw this one, I was like, okay, this one makes way more sense than what you're saying. But go ahead, go ahead. What did you think? Like, do you think it's crazy? I've been seeing a lot of those, and I tried to like click on it, and I was like, they just attacked his career. I'm like, ah, no. Like, I need to like hear scientists talk about this. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
that's what I've been seeing more is breaking down some of the things that are true or false in the thing. Even like that video with the Saturn thing that he showed.
Yeah. Oh, you saw something about that?
Yeah,
It's not
someone
real.
was like pointing out if you there's a part of it. I think someone found the full video where it's like it shows gravity as 0, but then
Okay.
within that line there's like force. I think there's something written in the force number that's what they weren't showing, and like I don't know like how
Oh,
these.
force is like gravity.
Yeah. Or like, and like I don't know if the particles are
Interesting.
already set up there, so they're just playing, and then the particles are moving or not. So I don't
Yeah.
like I don't know like who set up the program. I mean, also like there could be things that like Terrence didn't make the program; he was watching somebody else do
Yeah.
it, so he could
Right.
be fooled
Exactly.
by that
So,
person
yeah.
too, right?
Yeah. That's what. Okay, that's interesting that you said that. Before we continue, do you hear the ambulance in the back? Should I shut my windows?
I didn't hear it,
All right, cool.
but
All right,
I
perfect,
wanted to
perfect.
add one other thing to the patent thing that he said. Well,
Yeah.
he got. I think it's incorrect, which is because I looked up that specific patent, the AR for the VR one, right?
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Um, it's also an abandoned patent. He didn't get that patent, right?
Yeah, he said that.
Yeah,
He was
but
like, he didn't pursue it.
exactly. But also, he said that they were citing his patent. They did not cite his patent.
Would they not?
No.
Oh,
So
really?
what happens is, and it was, and I looked at
Interesting.
it too because it showed Sony's there, but there's like the number, his patent number is there with an asterisk, and I looked at what the asterisk is saying that the patent examiner or whatever, right? The one that so Sony
Yeah. Looks good.
applies the patent or sends in a patent because Terrence's thing's going to be there as a timeline thing, so they'll have to look at it anyways. But it's an abandoned, even though it's an abandoned patent, right?
So it might not even be correct. It's just a part of the timeline.
Yeah, it's just part of the timeline.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, same category, and
Okay.
it wasn't cited by Sony, for instance, right? It was cited by a patent
Okay.
examiner who's just looking at all the previous things to it.
Damn.
So
Okay.
like that was very but
Interesting.
he said it in a way that it was there citing him, but
Yeah.
in his own patents you
Yeah.
can see the citations to his patent. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. That sucks because it's like, it's really just it's a marketing thing. Like that's just how you phrased it. You know what I mean? That's just a
Yeah.
trick of
That's why I was
like
like,
your
yeah, that's
linguistics.
why I looked it up. Is like, okay, what is it? So I had to like look up what does it mean, and his thing was just a patent application, and he didn't I guess they were asking for more information to make sure that these things
Yeah.
are something that's actually different, or it's just a copy of something else. So I guess that process didn't go
Ooh,
through, and
rough.
it became an abandoned patent, right? Because he stopped.
Oh, that's so sad. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. Hmm. See, this is more of like the things that are making me like not believe. Like, when you introduce one piece of doubt into something, then you're like,
Yeah,
I don't know
but
if the rest of it is correct or not.
exactly. I think there's nothing wrong with talking about these things or trying to have a different viewpoint of science or viewpoint of the
Oh,
world,
that's interesting you said that.
because
That's
that's
what
the only
that's
way that
yeah.
you get ideas and study those ideas.
Facts. Yeah, 100%. 100%. Okay, okay. This dovetails into the theories of everything guy. So I like the theories of everything. It's the guy from Toronto, the Indian
Hmm.
dude, and he has like a lot of. I watch it all the time. Like his scientists on there are sick, and they are. I watch him primarily for the UAP stuff. I don't really care about his other like theories, and he had a chemist on there,
Hmm.
and they were just basically going through the chemistry portion of the periodic table, and the interesting thing is like they weren't attacking him.
Hmm.
They were just like they were trying to explain what he might have meant, and then they said this one thing, and I was like, "Ooh, you can't really compete with that." So you can watch it later on. Actually I posted it and then I sent it to you. So whoever's listening, if you want to watch that, basically what they talked about was the levels of understanding,
Hmm.
and I didn't even know about this, but this is why I didn't want to go into that field of like for me, the reason why I'm so obsessed with marketing is because like things like physics and mathematics, like they didn't it seemed like fake to me. Like there's something like raw, like it's like, oh, it's just an infinite world, bro. Like you're never gonna know all the mathematics, right? And then you have to like understand one theory and then you apply that theory, and sometimes that theory gets broken. You're like, oh dude, what are you
Hmm.
doing, right? So what he said is one of the reasons why he started the Theories of Everything podcast is because of the levels of understanding. So in academia, this person has a mathematical physics bachelor's. So like he has some good understanding, right? But he has like professors on. So there's level one, which is high school and pop sci.
Yep.
So he puts that in the level of and the chemist was saying, yeah, that these are the three levels too. Like it's widely known. So you put that in like the Neil deGrasse Tyson
Hmm.
thing. He's communicating to the rest of the world what the science is.
Yep.
Like high school teachers. Like it's like, oh, this is what it is, what we know so far. Okay. He also doesn't like Neil deGrasse Tyson. He like
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't watch the other video, but he digs at him. And it's like, oh, that's weird. Because like a lot of people are like, why don't you trust this UAP thing to know? He's like, oh, it's so dumb. The science is not there. And he's like, oh yeah, because you're level one, right? And he's like, beware the level one because they're communicating to the masses,
Hmm.
right? So it's like we don't really know. Like they might not really know the two other levels. So then there's level one. Level two is you are understanding the equations now. So it's like, how did you distill? Like, you know what I mean? Like, level one's like distilling it to the masses, like, oh, the gravity works like this. But then level two is like, okay, well, all these equations work in collaboration to make this,
Hmm.
right? So one thing he said was, if you change the one times one equals two, if you change that thing, it's a part of a small subset of other mathematical equations. So if you change that one, you actually inadvertently change all the math around it.
Yep.
So you can't just change that one equation. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that there was like subsets of mathematics that are like grouped together,
Hmm.
right? Um, and then the level three is where you know those equations so well you can start to affect them, and that's where like the bleeding edge of
Yep.
science is, where you're like, well, there's a hole here. I can kind of like, what if I do
Yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So what are you saying is Terrence is level one, and he's delving into two and three, and he's getting them confused now. So one thing that he said to me, and I was like, "Oh, this is exactly why I didn't like physics in high school, because like force equals mass times acceleration,
Yeah.
F equals ma. So like that was something that was drilled into us since high school. It's like, yeah, F equals ma. Like yeah, that's like
Hmm.
a general principle. And then he said like that's not real at the second level.
Yeah.
That's actually not the equation.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
damn.
The
Okay,
thing
go
is
ahead. Yeah.
this, because I learned that in high school, in the sense that
Yeah.
of chemistry, because we learned in, was
Okay.
it grade, I don't know, in 10 or 11
Like
chemistry.
11, 12,
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
there was a basic thing to the chemistry, and we went to the next grade. It was like, oh, these things are changed now, because you have to understand the
Yes.
principles, what we're doing,
Yes.
then to understand what we're doing next, why the change is
And
happening.
that's why
That's when I figured out.
100%.
Yeah, that's when I figured out that, oh, it's whatever I learned last year was just super basic, just to understand these
Yeah.
little uh, definitions and elements and whatever. But then the next level, it was
Yeah.
how they were working together, like, putting the names together, the numbers. Like, that's when I saw, like, there's levels to this thing.
Levels to it. Yeah, totally. And that's what turned me off like all science because I
Hmm.
was like, oh man, I'm never gonna like master but you can master the reason why I like marketing is you can master the mind, right? It's universal. Like if I can just shape your opinion. So it just seemed more tangible and like accessible to me.
Sure.
But with the other levels of those things, it's like it's like oh, we even do it too when it's like we talk about awareness and like determinism. We're at like level 3 with it, and then people are like a level 1. So you're like, if you're going straight to the answer, like you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
you really have to do the steps in order to appreciate the like simplicity, like simple is complicated understood.
Hmm.
Right. So what Terrence said is he like dropped out of university because he was like, oh, this is not correct with my belief
Sure.
system.
Yeah.
Right.
But
But it's like, oh, but you didn't stick through the rigor enough to get to level 2 and 3. So like what one thing they were saying about the periodic table, because the guy who was on was a chemist, and he was like, nobody actually really uses the periodic table. So even though you're like presenting them, we actually have multiple different variations at the highest levels. We have multiple different variations of periodic tables, but we all really just use like one, and we know about the other ones, but we apply
yeah.
this one.
It,
Like it's like a
yeah,
periodic table is just like, oh,
and
that's an
the thing
interesting
is that
way of
even with the periodic table, the way it's just set up is just the amount of electrons they have. Like, that's like the rows
Yeah,
how
yeah,
they've
yeah.
done it. It was just
That yeah.
right.
That's what he said. It's like it's utility. It's like it's not actually it's not a direct relationship. It's like we can look at this and we can make quick
Yeah,
calculations using
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah. But whereas like Terrence Howard was like, this is all wrong. It's actually structured like this. It's
Hmm.
like, but nobody even really uses that stuff.
Hmm.
Like in the highest levels, we're not using that. And but what was really cool about what the scientist said was Terrence has the makings for an an actual scientist
Hmm.
because you have like the curiosity and then you have the um like the missing points and then because you're like okay, something's not right here, I'm not getting enough of what I want, how can I make this better? And those are the things that make a scientist a scientist. It's like, but he's like, you have to still go through the first steps in
Yes,
order to
to
like
get to that
apply those now
understanding.
because
Yeah.
it's like now we can have a conversation, right? And what he was saying is that as well, that if you're a level 3 in one subject, you might be a level 1 in another subject.
Hmm.
So when you're trying to merge all of these theories together, like what Terrence was trying to do, he's like a microbiologist and a physicist are level 3 in their own zone, but they're level 1 to each other.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't even have the same conversation.
That's why it's like
And it's like,
who you're
uh,
talking to, who which, even though they're a PhD person, they're only in PhD in the specific field that they're in. They don't know the other
right,
fields.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And that's what he's saying is like that's where Terrence is getting mixed up because like there are different levels that kind of break the systems, and he was taking from the different
Hmm.
levels,
Yeah.
and by taking from the different levels, it was like oh well, there's an inaccuracy here. You're right, there is, but because of this.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like nobody gave him the level 3 answer when he's like, wait, there's a missing link.
Right.
And then the scientists, that's why it's a good podcast. They were like filling in the missing links. They're like, oh, I think he meant this, but that's related to this.
Hmm.
You know, they weren't like making fun of him. And he even said, like, I'm sure people will make fun of him for this, but like they just don't see what he's doing. He's like,
Right.
he's just mixing up the levels,
Yeah.
right? Which, now I'm like, it's good because well, one thing the podcast people said was like now it's bringing more attention to science, which is great. More people
Sure.
flock to it, like, oh, what's wrong? What's right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
But like it's the confusion part that's really bad because you're like a level 1 and you're explaining this to the masses now. This is also why I don't think they like Neil deGrasse Tyson because he's a level 1. He understands like, okay, well, these are all the principles that have been created, but he's not making new principles.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like he's not at that like level of rigor
Sure. Of
to
course. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to break things.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's
Right.
why he's so anti-alien. And you're like, all right, well, he's like, well, no, all the science is this, but then like the chemist right now. So at the end of it, he was like, "Oh, tell people what you're working on." So I was like, he didn't even. I don't even know what this guy was talking about. Like, what he was working on to verify all the things he was saying. And it turns out he's studying UAPs. He's trying to make biological artificial intelligence. Um, he's just like at this, like all the things that we would be like, oh, you're just one of the shills.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely not a shill. Like the projects that he's working on, it's like, oh, these are bleeding edge things that even I'm interested in, which is like, what are the UAPs? How are they coming from here? Like, can we generate consciousness again in other things? Can we make AI seem human?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So it's like he's not even like a conservative scientist, but he's saying like Terrence is a little missing the mark.
Right.
So it's like, okay, I believe you now.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if he was like, oh, I'm strictly in these things, and he actually said this too. When you get to the level 3s, you have people that are trying to break it and people are trying to keep it together.
Mm-hmm.
But the great part is when you bring those people together, then the people that try and break it need the people that keep it together in order to like come up with new ideas.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because if you're all trying to break it, then you're all just gonna make stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it was a cool bit of breaking the internet, but now I'm kind of like, too bad.
Yeah. Yeah, and I watched some other videos because he did it at was it Oxford or something? I saw a little bit of
No
that
way,
too.
he said the same stuff.
Yeah. It was all the
Really?
same similar stuff. They mentioned it. He mentioned it. Joe Rogan mentioned it in the podcast that I saw
I
that he did
didn't
it
see it
at.
online though.
Well, I saw like clips of it that when the students were
Okay.
asking him questions, but it was the 1x1 thing, right? That's what he
Oh,
started
interesting.
to
Okay.
focus on. But also that doesn't make sense to the multiplication thing, right? Like he's saying that 1 times
Oh yeah,
1 equals
they
2,
brought that
right?
up too. Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I break it down this simply, right? If you get $1 an hour for work,
Mm.
so if you do 1 times 1 for Terrence when it's 2, that means you should be getting $2 for the 1 hour work, or is
Okay.
it that
Yes.
wouldn't make sense, right?
No. Yeah, totally. Yeah. It's I forgot what they called it in that podcast, but it's like conceptual grouping of mathematics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like 5 times 2 equals 10, but 2 times 5 doesn't equal 10.
Right.
So it sounds like you're like, wait,
Okay.
but it should equal 10. But then the theories of everything guy was like, no, but when you apply it to
It depends what you're doing it for, right?
yeah, what you're doing
Yeah,
with
what
it.
you're doing,
It's
because
like if you're doing apples, it's not gonna work that
yeah,
way.
but if you're
And I was like,
doing
oh crap.
area, it's 1 times 1 is 1 squared. So
You right, okay.
it's like
Yeah. So, but those are the level 2s now.
Yeah, it
You're like,
depends on application.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn. And then that makes you sad because you're like, damn, this like it sounded so good when you're saying it, but now it's like, okay. It makes you look more faulty.
Right.
When they explain like it's like that actually makes total sense. When they were talking about like groupings of mathematics or applications of mathematics, it's like, yeah, you're not as you believe in this thing, but do you have the rigor? This is what they're saying. You need the rigor of assessing your ideas,
Mm-hmm.
which he doesn't have because he didn't go to like school for it.
Right.
You know, he's just more like consuming the information
Mm-hmm.
and then like compiling the information. Yeah. I wonder though, like what the patent thing like was really interesting because it's like, okay, what do you have then? Like what do you have? Like what they were saying this as well though. The theories of everything guy. He's like, no, he's clearly intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
Like to be able to do, to be able to conceptualize some of the theories that he was saying. Like, no, he's not dumb.
Yeah.
But it's just like, but you're missing the piece. But you know, I'm just like, how much can I believe from that podcast now? That's actually why I didn't cut anything up from it because I was like, I was so excited, and then like it's like divine intervention. As I was cutting it, I watched this podcast as I was cutting it. And I was like, "Ah, I can't post these because this is gonna be disinformation now. Because like we don't know if
Yeah,
it's real or not.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh well.
Like you can talk a
But
lot of stuff,
yeah.
but again, you know, once you start getting peer review, that's the only way you know what's true or not.
Yeah. Totally, totally. But the thing that he was defending against is like, well, that's the systematized academia model, and you're like, ooh, I can't disagree with that.
No, no, yeah,
You know
no,
what I
no,
mean? It's
no.
like,
I understand
like
that,
he
but
was
like,
like,
I understand that when you do that, but you're also saying that because your stuff isn't going to be true, you're blaming something else too, right?
that's what I
That's
mean. That's what I mean. Yeah, 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 exactly, exactly. If you counter your argument by saying like, well, you're wrong because your system of understanding is already wrong. Well, it's like, well, all right, well,
then how do we know
damn. Now we
what
have to
truth is?
apply.
Then that's what
Yeah,
you're
how do we know it's
saying.
true? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I hope something cool. I don't know. I've kind of like I hope something cool comes from this, but what I've kind of done was like almost push this aside and go back. Like the thing that fascinates me about UAPs is like you have you have a lot of level threes studying the UAP
Mhm.
thing. Like like I don't that level one, two, and three thing is just I'm gonna use that from now on. Cause like when you said Neil deGrasse Tyson's level one, it actually makes total sense why he's debunking it so much. But then you have Michio Kaku, a level three, who's being like, no, this actually it makes total sense. So I'm
Mhm.
like, how does Michio Kaku because in our minds we're like Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, same level. But it's like, no, one's a science communicator. He's even said that. I'm a science communicator.
Yeah.
And then we have a scientist.
Mhm.
You know? Yeah. Yeah. Oh well. Do you think this will affect his career at all? Or probably not his career, but like, I mean, people don't think he's crazy now.
Um.
I hope it
I
doesn't
think
make people like
I
believe him
I think it
without
does.
study, you know?
No, I think it does. I think
Oh, which
believe him.
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, totally. It's funny when you like with these things, it's like you're either like for, against, and very few people are in the center. Where it's like, okay, what's true, what's not true? Let's look at that.
Yeah.
You know, that's
Yeah.
why I like seeing you because we're both in the center. We're like, he might be right, but he might be wrong.
Mhm.
Let's just see both sides. Who's you know, and I was like messaging this because this guy like follows me on IG. Shout out to you. And he was messaging me about. I didn't even watch it yet. He's just like, "Have you seen the Terrence Howard thing?" And I'm like, no," but I'll like watch it. And then I heard, I was like, "Dude, this is freaking mind blowing." He's like, "I know, right?" And then I sent him the theories of everything thing, and I was like, "Yeah, I kind of feel like this is more accurate." And I was like, I don't know how you're gonna take this because like
Yeah,
some
yeah, yeah,
people are
yeah.
like,
Sure.
and the guy was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And it's like I really hope that there are more people like that than like the left and right aspect of it. Because
Yeah,
if you just blindly believe him, it's like, oh, come on, bro.
I hope so. We'll see in time, but I think I mean,
Ooh.
it might be, but fine. I think we're just in an era
Yeah.
now of distrusting uh mainstream stuff.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
why.
But it's like 100% agree with you. And it's like, but you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
That's the
Like,
problem. Yeah, yeah.
they're like, come on, bro. Like,
That's gonna be the reaction, right? If something's mainstream media has been, or mainstream in some sense has been got in recent time got something wrong, the reaction's always going to be that everything that they're doing is wrong, right? But that will
exactly. But
only
it's like, no, but
last.
it's not true,
Yeah,
bro.
yeah. That's the thing. But this is the reaction of society in general.
Facts. Yeah, facts,
Right.
facts.
But once you
Um,
get the other side, oh, these are not actually working, none of these things, then it will, okay, these parts of it mainstream were correct, right? Like there's a
yeah,
balance that will happen, but it's an ebb and flow thing,
yeah.
right? Nothing's in straight lines.
Like, no, 100%. And one thing that they were talking about with like ancient technologies is using vibrations to cut things.
Right.
Why are you laughing?
No,
Because the straight
because
lines?
yeah.
Because he said there's no straight lines. You're funny. The thing that the thing that they were saying back then was like they're using vibrations to cut things, and that's what got me really excited because I was like, and there some scientists are actually trying this right now,
Mhm.
um, like to figure out how it was
Right,
done or like
right.
trying to back engineer like And so when he said that, I was like, ooh, that might be right. So I do like that there are people like him like pushing the boundaries of what we know, because then it gets more people to look at it. Because it's all about funding, right? Like you only look into research for things that get funded. We're not in an altruistic world where we're like, what's the best idea? It's only ideas that are interesting get funded, right? So him putting a light on this is also good because it's like maybe we will get a
That's also
vibration
yeah,
tool to like
sure.
cut things. You know what I mean? Like that, you know, because now it's in the like public awareness now that there are those things, and then people look into it like, wait, what about this? Oh, let's fund this research to like, you know, but but it's interesting. We were talking about like the left and right point of view. Is there anything about Terrence Howard? Because I'm about to like segue a little bit.
No, I think that's.
They want to bring up? No. All right. So, have you been on the subway recently?
A couple of weeks ago, just to go to that F1 thing. But other than that, no.
But no, right? Okay. So, like, I don't. All right. Maybe I'll just keep it more anonymous. So, this person was finally on the subway after a long time. Okay. And they were like to me, "Oh, dude, the subway's so depressing." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, like you have been in this like bubble of what we don't realize, right? Which is like why we keep saying like interact with more people, right? There are certain pockets of reality that are people's reality for the rest of their lives, or until they choose to change it, whatever, whatever. And the subway is one of them. And there's a reason why I'm obsessed with work. Like I literally said I will never work in an office again for myself, only because I know I'll have to commute there. I don't mind, like, all right, maybe this is the most amazing office, or if I get a second car, like, sure, I'll drive there. But like, one thing that killed me when I was working at that first place, when you were still living with us, was going on the subway every day to go to work. And I was like, oh my God, these people are like, it's just depressing, you know? Even in the middle of the day, if I'm trying to go to like a bookstore and I'm like, oh, nobody's going to be around because it's in the middle of the day. But then you see the people still coming home from, I guess, midday jobs or like whatever, and they're just like slumped over, sad, depressed,
Yeah, yeah.
waiting for the stop. And you're just like, oh, bro, this is your reality. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's not my reality. And if you manicure your reality in a way where it's like, I will only subject myself to this kind of thing, then you actually, your entire life changes. Your whole like mindset, um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
perspective,
Right.
it's totally different, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're living that, it's like, okay, like this is all you know. So you're gonna think everybody thinks their life sucks, right? Because that's you look to the left, look to the right, everyone
Sure.
thinks their life sucks. So there's that. But then have you heard of it's like new on Netflix, Ashley Madison?
Yeah, yeah, I watched it.
Oh, dude, we're watching it right now. Okay, don't no spoilers, no
Okay,
spoilers.
okay.
But oh, we'll talk. We'll make that another topic later.
Okay, sure.
I'm like in episode 1, I think. So
Okay.
one thing that we were saying when we watch this is, wow, there's a lot of dumb people in this world, right? You're just like, or a lot of dumb, desperate, a lot of like you didn't know how the internet worked. I didn't get to the end because now you're looking at me like there's a twist. But in episode 1, when you're like, oh, let me just put all my information out there, I was like, ooh, on a when you're trying to be private, like how does this?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Or what were you gonna say? Or were
Uh,
you gonna say something like antithesis to
no,
what
no,
I was
no, no,
saying?
no, no. Yeah, no, no. I was just thinking. I can't remember how we were like, but I don't think I ever put my information, just yeah, like on the internet for anything.
Real information?
Real
Oh, I
information.
do that, bro. I started to do that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Oh,
no, no,
when we
no,
were
no, no,
kids,
no, no.
no.
I'm saying when we were kids, because this is the time when we didn't understand.
The Wild West, bro.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But I
Yeah.
don't think I ever put my like a real information on the internet at that time. I'm talking about. Now it's a bit
Yeah, yeah,
different,
it's always
right?
the
There's some, some other. It depends on where you're gonna put your real information at.
yeah, like an ordering system. I'm going to have to put my actual address in,
Right.
like
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Amazon,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know,
That's what I'm
or like
saying.
the bank. I need
Yeah,
to put my real
yeah,
information.
yeah. But like even yeah, you go like to ask for an email at a store. I'll just give them one that I don't really use, right? Like I'm not
Oh
gonna
yeah, true. Okay,
like
I
that.
know what you're
That's
saying.
generally the thing that I've always been doing, right? So it's like
Yeah, I'm less so in that case, but I know where you're coming from.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But
But
we were
these people put like everything in there,
yeah.
and like
Well, I don't
the
want to.
thing
I don't
that
want to
they
say
actually,
everyone. I don't want to
yeah,
say everyone. Put their
okay.
information in there. I don't think everybody was that dumb.
Why is there a twist in the?
No, no, no. I'm not saying there's a twist because
Oh, okay.
they're talking to specific people, right? So
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. No, no. Okay, wait, wait. That wait. That's not why we're saying that there's a lot of idiots. I'm I'm saying that there's a lot of people that are clearly unhappy with their lives, such that they turn to this thing. And then when I watch the marketing of this thing, I'm like, oh, you're marketing to the desperate. When he's like, when it's like,
yeah,
when
I don't like.
monogamy
Yeah,
has
yeah, yeah, yeah.
become monotony. Oh,
Yes,
wait, wait,
yes.
wait.
No, no, yeah, yeah. Because I watched the whole thing, so I know the arc of the story that they're. It's very interesting.
Okay, I'm only in the beginning. So
Yeah,
like in the beginning, I'm just looking at the
yeah,
marketing tactics,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that's like it seems like let's just have an affair, and you're like, that seems really dumb. Like
Mm-hmm,
like
mm-hmm,
not the affair part. Like sure, whatever you want, but it's more like signing up for this thing to publicly have an affair seems a little like what if you run into um your husband or wife on there? You're like, wait, you're on there
yeah, yeah.
too. Oh no, that's one of the twists, isn't it? Two people are on there at the same time because that was Tara's guess.
No, no, no.
Okay, all right, cool, cool, cool. All right, so I'm like sneakily asking
But
you for
they
spoilers.
do. I would say that Netflix does a really good job in how they depict this whole storytelling.
Present information.
Yeah, yeah. It's really really
Yeah,
well
okay.
done. Yeah.
Okay, so with that, like the mindset of people, it's like what I notice is that a lot of people, if we go back to the subway, just the drudging day in, day out, and then the unhappiness with like Ashley Madison, the unhappiness with their lives, it's like they're looking for a solution and they don't care what the solution is. And that's the Terrence Howard thing. That's why I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
people are gonna see this and be like, oh man, I hate the government. I knew it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then
Exactly.
instead of being like, wait a minute, is he correct? Or are you like adding your bias onto this
Mm-hmm.
thing?
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I feel like not I feel like just like the person who hadn't been on the subway recently to have that revelation, I kind of feel like as I spend more time as an adult, I'm like slowly veering away from believing that people are better than they are.
Okay.
That sounds so negative, but it's like I really think that, and you see it in motivational pages a lot, that it's the 1% of the 1%
Mm-hmm.
of people who actually like are aware of these things or like self-aware or like, you know what I'm trying to say? And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like who's gonna ask that question? Who's gonna delve deeper? Or are they just gonna look at Terrence Howard and be like, oh, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I've kind of lost a little faith in the masses, I would say. I believe in a select few, and I believe that the rest are moving things along. And it's like this is segued to another topic, but that's kind of what we talked about it before, but it's like it's becoming so obvious now that it's like there's like a 99% that's just moving as a horde, and then there's like a 1% that's like self-aware enough to be like, maybe we shouldn't do that, or like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I feel like those 1% collectively find each other.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, you think like me? All right, cool. We can have a conversation. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. You agree with that? You're like seeing that too. It's like, I don't know, like blind,
Yeah, in a
like
way.
hope. It's hope. They're like hoping for something without making the change. So like, I don't like hope because it's like, it seems faulty because hope comes with despair. You know, so you're like, you're crossing your fingers in case something happens without doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't believe in hope. I believe in trust. Where it's like I trust that I will do this thing. You
Sure.
know,
Right.
it's more actionable.
Mm-hmm.
Hope is like you're waiting around. But yeah, where are you're gonna say?
Um, I don't remember now. But I think it's a different world with the internet now too, right? Like people want
Totally, yeah.
the conspiracy thing is what's making money or what grabs people's attention. So like I see it,
Or is that like,
I don't know. I think that's
yeah,
just like how I like watching how the Twitch world has changed too. Like what
yeah, yeah,
was, normal live stream stuff where people,
yeah, yeah.
didn't do craziness. But then over time, the only way to get attention, we have to one up each other. So the craziness
Yes.
increased
Like
each
Logan
time.
Paul. Remember when he went to the Japanese like suicide forest and then he was like running around with it
Right.
and like,
Yeah.
and then he was like, "Oh, sorry, I was trying to constantly achieve more and more,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it like
So
was to my
like
detriment."
exactly. But that's still happening now cuz if a new person is coming in the live stream world, well they have to up the one that's already a bigger streamer than them.
Yeah,
So they have to do
totally,
weirdness,
totally,
craziness.
totally, totally.
So like the only way people are getting attention, like as soon as Terrence Howard thing, all I saw was people were like, "Oh, he's onto something. He's onto something." Those are the videos I was seeing,
Mhm.
but that's gonna get the attention. It's gonna take time because then only like a few days later, people that are like you have to look into it, right? Look into the
Yeah,
whole who's gonna spend 30 minutes or whatever, an hour, just looking at what is the meaning of these words in the patents. Like he said cited, but when it said
right.
cited
Yeah,
by
yeah, yeah.
examiner, what is this? But if you don't understand the
Yeah,
definitions,
yeah.
right? But you had to spend time, but no one's going to spend time looking at the definitions unless you really want to spend time to look at it. But then that's going to take, you're not going to get, your video is not going to go up or get the attention because
Yeah,
other videos are already out agreeing with him because it's much more easier to do than looking at actual information and getting it correct or not.
totally, and that's why it's the 1%, the 1%
Mm-hmm.
who are doing the work, and I feel like most people, like, if you are just chasing infinite growth by making things more and more ridiculous, you are also a part of the cog.
Mm-hmm.
Like you might be like, "Oh, I'm like independent. That's why I'm doing this." It's like, no, you're just feeding into the cog. You're just like, you're more of like a what do you call that? It's like a an instigator of the fire. Like,
Mm-hmm.
but you're still part of the fire, bro. Like to actually take the time to look at it would be more like free thinking because it's like you're not just going with the one thing or you're
Yeah,
not just chasing
exactly.
the one
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
You're like, what does it mean? How will this affect things? Like you take a pause,
Mm-hmm.
you know? But yeah, I was shocked that even the theories of everything guy made the thing because if it wasn't for him, I would have been like, maybe he's onto something. And
Yeah.
then I would have had like eight. I was ready, man. I had like 8 posts, like just gonna like put them out.
Right,
But
right,
then
right.
when I saw, it, I was like, this is. I agree with you. I can't put this out because
Mm-hmm.
this is like you're gonna make it seem like he's correct when there's like some obvious
Exactly. Yeah, 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 yeah,
fallacies
yeah, yeah,
there.
yeah. That's what I was like. I was like, I don't want to
Yeah.
show it right. I wanted to say it here, explain the patent thing too, because I knew, like you were saying that, oh,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
got
yeah,
the
totally.
patents. So they even showed it on the podcast, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But then
yeah,
I
yeah,
I looked up the patents, so it had to spend time understanding what does this citation stuff mean, like trying to look up
yeah, yeah, yeah,
definitions.
totally.
What? Because I don't know the world of patents, but I gotta spend time doing that.
Right.
You're right.
No, that's why I asked you. I was like,
Yeah,
what is
yeah, yeah.
this,
No, I
bro?
know, I know,
I knew
exactly.
you'd be interested enough to look into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But like,
Which, yeah,
yeah, who's gonna do that, right? Only if you're interested in learning about new. Because I don't know the patent world. I just that's the system that we have that proofs, whatever that.
totally. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like,
It's also a two-step thing. You have to be able to one, look at it, and then two, accept that you might be wrong.
mm-hmm,
So like I didn't look at it. You looked at it, but you told me this is the thing. I'm like, okay, we're wrong. Like watching the theories of everything, I'm like, okay, we were wrong.
mm-hmm,
I don't need to. I will trust that you know more due to your rigor than Terrence does.
mm-hmm.
When he said like when he's all right, it's sort of like this. Martial arts or many things. I guess music too. It's like because I've heard this analogy. You first learn the rules, and then you could break the rules. But it's in art as well.
Yeah,
Like people are like, "Oh, it's not using the rule of thirds," and I'm like, "Okay, yeah, but I'm using this
mm-hmm,
to make it better than the rule of thirds." And they're like, "Oh, like if you look at two images and you're like, if you look at it not objectively, if you look at it subjectively, you're like, I like this one better. But then if you look at it objectively, you're like, well, it's not using the rules.
right.
And then you're like, yeah, but it's the
Yeah,
feeling,
exactly.
you know? And
That's a good
but
point.
you
That's a
can
good.
only
That's a good
get to the
example.
feeling,
That's a good example
right?
with
You can
art.
only get to the feeling
Yeah,
until
you understand the
I've
basics.
already mastered the rule of thirds and it's like, oh well, I could use that, but
You can play with
you
it.
know,
Yeah.
play with it, right? But he hasn't. When he said like he left you, actually, you know the first thing that we're back to Terrence.
I
The
know.
first thing that he said that made me go like, this is weird, and I wanted to turn it off was when he said, "I woke up in my mother's womb and I remembered it."
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like,
That's how we
but I
started.
was like,
Okay.
well, it was kind of weird. But a lot of scientists, not scientists, a lot of spiritual people have cited that.
Mm-hmm.
Yogananda, in I got to read that book though, the autobiography of a yogi. But I put that one down too, only because that's how it opened. Like the if you look at everyone was like talking about it
But
before, it was like super popular.
yeah.
Um, sure. Wait, let's finish this
Finish your
idea.
thought. Yeah.
But once you introduce something that doesn't seem accurate, how can I trust the rest of what you said?
Mm-hmm.
So in the opening of Autobiography of a Yogi, he says, "I woke up in my mother's womb," and I was like, "Well, that's impossible. Your brain wasn't formed. Like you have no consciousness at that time." So you're suggesting that like consciousness is independent of like consciousness is localized to memories because we know that the brain holds memories. That's why if you like affect the brain, you don't remember certain things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like it's a physical thing,
Yeah. Yeah.
but you haven't physically developed enough in order to create a memory.
Sure.
And have you
Right.
studied like pseudo memories?
Right.
You know, it's like I can make myself believe that I also woke up in my mother's room.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we know that?
Yeah.
You know? And he opened with the same thing, and that's when I was like, oh, I don't want to listen to this. But then I was like, well, let me go. And then he talked about patents, and I was like, okay, maybe there's something here because you have patents. But then you said like, with the whole patent issue. Oh, what were you gonna say before I?
Yeah. It sounds very much like he could build a cult, like a
Yeah,
religion.
yeah,
That's the vibe I was getting to from
yeah,
the way he speaks. That's-
yeah, totally, totally, totally. Because you're charismatic, you say some things that
you
are
believe
like,
it. You believe in what you're saying,
yeah, you believe
or
it, yeah.
yeah, at least that's what it seems like. Yeah. So
Do you remember? You remember what the bleep do we know? It was like a book
yeah, I think so.
that
Yeah.
okay, it was a very popular book that used a lot of like quantum physics jargon and a lot of like consciousness jargon, and then people loved it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so the person who wrote that, but then it was debunked by a lot of scientists. But people, like you were saying, like cult, so charismatic. You seem like you know something that other people don't know. So Nexium, the guy who not started Nexium but made Nexium go to the next level, he wrote uh, "What the bleep do we know?"
Okay.
So it's like he already has a skill set in making people gravitate towards a certain thing. Do
Yeah.
you remember Nexium, the sex cult, and
Yeah.
the
Yeah. Yeah. You told
Ashley
me.
Mack?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, dude, you should watch that one. That's crazy. But okay, so he
Okay.
he had the ability to make people gravitate towards an idea. So you already had the experience in it, and like he utilized that to enhance his cult,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's like that is a bit of the Terrence Howard thing going on. You kind of feel
You
it. You're
feel
like,
it. Yeah.
you might know some things, but like
No. Yeah.
again, level one, two, and three.
Exactly. There could be levels of truths or scientific truths in what he's saying, but you're also
Yeah,
filling it with a lot of other jargon that may not be true or isn't true, right? So like
yeah, yeah, totally, totally.
that's the issue.
Yeah, facts. Okay, quick pause. Drank too much caffeine. We'll be right back. One second. All right, and we're back. So the one thing you said there, which is like the truth. This is a slightly different topic, but well, it's a totally different segue.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I'm talking about jujitsu now. The that is the truth. That is the martial arts truth. Aside from like knife fighting, which I also study, you can't pressure test it. Knife fighting. I'm not gonna get a live knife, be like, hey, is this gonna
Sure.
work? You can get one of those like buzzer knives where it's like if it touches you, it goes beep beep beep, right? But that's not enough of a pressure test to like know that in a fight this is how it'll work. And even if you just get grazed a little bit, you're still gonna be cut. Can my hand still hold the knife if
Mm-hmm.
I'm cut a little bit? So like to me, that's like the highest level of self defense because you're like we're dealing with weapons now. But below that, but there's no truth. There's too much uncertainty. But in terms of like truth, jujitsu, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say that because So every time a new person joins the gym, especially like a white belt, or like they move up to the next class where they're like, because where I study, it's like you can't join live rolling until you've gotten to a certain level,
Okay.
or else it's just not fair.
Yeah.
Like you don't know
Right.
any of the moves, bro.
Sure.
So um, there's people that join the class, and then I'm always gravitate towards them. It's kind of weird because I'm like a higher belt, but I'm like, no, I want to see what you think you know,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
because you might pull out something that I've never seen. I'm like, oh, what is this, right? So there was a black belt in judo who joined
Mm-hmm.
the advanced class. They were just like doing a drop in, and I was like, oh, let's see what I know. Like, let's see what I know compared to them. Like, obviously, I've studied other martial arts, but like, let's just see if what I know in jujitsu will match up against what the black belt in judo knows, right? Because like grappling. So uh, I was able to like stop their throws, and again, jujitsu is about the ground. It's not actually about like stopping a takedown. So I was, oh, you totally froze there. Are we still good?
Yeah. Maybe it's
Okay, you're like, hella choppy.
probably in your end because I don't see choppy, and you're fine on my side.
Oh, it's mine, right? All right, cool.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the all right, this black belt in judo joined, and I was like, okay, cool. Like, let me see. And then because their main focus is about stand up and throwing.
You're right. Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm gonna be thrown. That's fine. But what happens if we like continue the roll?
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
because like a fight's not over just because you got thrown, right? So they were able to throw me, not like hard, but they did get me to the ground. And then as soon as we hit the ground, I realized, oh crap, you don't know anything. Like worse than a white belt, because at least the white belts that join us, they go through like that period of like you learn an X amount of moves, so that um like you can kind of survive. But this person has just jumped in, right? And even though they're a black belt and people listen to this, like black belts are all different, like maybe some judo black belts know different moves. But I'm like, okay, you're just like a regular black belt that I'm like not like a competitive black belt. You're just like there who's gotten a black belt. So
Right.
you join the class. And what I realized is like, if you don't know the moves, you are like, you're like, not a fish. You're literally drowning. Like they say that as well, where it's like we're swimming on the mats. So if
Mm-hmm.
you don't know how to swim, you're gonna drown. And I was just like easily going from position to position, not even trying to go for the sub because that's just rude now. Like why would I sub you?
Yeah.
You don't even know the moves. And I was watching them kind of panic and like they didn't even know where to push my leg and like all that. And I was like, oh, this is the easiest thing ever. And then I was like, I went to a family party and I always like try and mess with my cousins because I'm like before it's like I didn't know as much to be like I can take you out with full confidence. So I was like always trying to test myself because like, oh, you're bigger. Like my cousins are bigger and stronger than me, right? And I can go hard on them, and they can go hard on me. So like, I was just at this cousin's party, and I was telling like, shout out to you because you know who you are. Um, I was like, I don't even want to wrestle you guys anymore. And they're like, why? And I'm like, it's just like after the experience with the judo black belt, I'm like, this is just rude. Like, why? You know what I mean? It's like you don't even know. Like, I'm just gonna tap you over and over and over, and it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
why are we doing that, man? You're like, you're just being a jerk, you know? And the reason why I say it's the truth is like all martial arts deliver a promise that not every martial art can keep. So like on my first one, oh, you'll be able to defend yourself, whatever. But it was a lot of like Taekwondo style kicks. Like, will that really work? I don't know. I watched this old video of me and my old training partner sparring, and we were just like tap kicking each other. And I was like, oh, dude, we don't even know what we thought if we tap kick somebody, they'd go to the ground, they'd be like, oh, I'm dead, you know. But it's like no, or like boxing, it's like, well, what happens if they kick your legs? Or like knife fighting, it's like, well, what if you get cut? But this is the only one that like I highly advocate to people who really want to learn martial arts. Again, if you just want like the exercise, don't do this one because it's very violent. But like, it's true what they say. With all the things that people say about jujitsu, I've actually hit a level now where psychologically, I'm like, I get what you guys were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like very rare. Yeah. I just want to bring that up because it's like we all we all have a promise of marketing, but how true is that thing?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting to see like, oh, you guys totally delivered on what you promised us.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Anyways, um yeah. The the other aspect of that, because I was like telling Taylor that one of the big or what was your biggest fear?
Uh,
Like all right, this is actually linked, and this is why I wanted to
what do you mean?
also talk
Just
about it.
in like flying? I don't know.
Just no, like your deepest fear. Like okay,
Oh, like
I'm just gonna
snakes?
say what it
Like
is.
snakes?
No, but like not really snakes, because like there's no snakes in the thing.
Yeah.
I think that every male's biggest fear, like whether we admit it or not, is being embarrassed in front of the one that we love. Not embarrassed like, oh, I slipped. Embarrassed
I see what you're saying.
like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure.
manhandled.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right,
Right?
right, right.
Imagine it, like I even said this to her, I'm like, if somebody held me down in front of you and then just beat the shit out of me, I would feel really bad. Like as a man, as like a
Sure.
human being,
Yeah,
like I was
yeah.
like, oh dude, that sucks. Like you know what I mean? Like not even like if I slipped in front of you, whatever, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter. But it's like being babied in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Like what does that even mean? Like you know what I mean? It's like so egoic. It's like ingrained in
Yeah,
human
yeah, yeah, yeah. Right, right,
maleness,
right,
right?
right, right.
But it's something we don't really think about, right? It's at our subconscious deepest level, that is our biggest fear.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from like heights and all that, because I'm not in a height moment right now, you know, but like that's scarring, you know?
Yeah, yeah, okay.
And and like with jujitsu, if you don't know jujitsu or like some form of self defense to give you but jujitsu is like the ultimate form to flip that switch in your mind of like, oh, I'll protect myself no matter what. Like, it's a joke. Like, I can't even fight you because it's like it's just mean, you know. Um, then you walk around, you walk around with that little bit of fear to be like, I need to fight you.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by that is like, a lot of people will get, damn, a lot of people will get into fights, okay, and they say that most martial artists will not get into a fight because they know like the true nature of violence, and I think that that's like true. Imagine the world where everybody knew how violent things can get, on top of the fact that they knew how to like mitigate it or like defend themselves in that way.
Right.
Where it's like, would we even have problems? You know what I'm saying? Because like the confidence that it gives you to walk away,
Mm-hmm.
that's a different
Sure.
confidence than to start a fight.
Mm-hmm.
People who are like, oh, I'm gonna fight you right now. I was talking to this one person I know, and they're like, "Oh man, my friends and my husband always get into fights. Whenever we go out party, they'll always get into a fight." And I was like, "They know how to fight?" That was the very first question. And they're like, "No, they've never trained." I'm like, "Yep, that makes sense."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because they're looking for it to be it's that feeling of like, but what if I get manhandled by you in front of my wife?
Mm-hmm.
You know, so they're gonna want to strike first. They're gonna try and posture out and be like, "Yo, get away from me, or else I'm gonna blah blah blah." Right? And it's like it's just because you don't really know how this will go. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Are you like, oh, I disagree, or like,
No, I think that makes sense in most scenarios. Yeah,
right?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Or do you think we'd sell violence if people knew the truth about violence? I'm sure we'd
Uh,
have violence, but
no,
it'd be
yeah,
like we're like high level skill now. We're like really fighting. You know?
yeah. Then it's a different level, right?
Yeah,
Because
you're like,
most people don't have that level of experience, right? So
mhm.
yeah, it's that's why I guess they jump into these things, but they don't really know what violence is, right? They don't know.
Yeah.
So that's
And we'd have a lot less of those
yeah, yeah, yeah.
if like if I knew, because the thing about jujitsu is like even a small person, if they have better skill than you, there's a freaking, I love it every time. So like, I know I do this for people, and then there's some people that do this
Mm-hmm.
for me. So I will, I always will go against a really big, stronger guy. Because I'm like, if it doesn't work against you, why am I trying to learn it? And then they're like, oh no, but stay in your weight category because it's sport. I'm like, I don't care about that stuff, bro. I care about like, what if this really went down? So the big dude, who I go with a lot, I can like either control or tap them out, and to them, they're like, how is this little person doing this to me? So I know I provide that to them. But then there's this little kid who like, I think he's like 16, and when he first started, he was like one of the younger belts, and he like joined up. And then I started to like show him like, hey, it could be a little, you could probably get me if you do this. And then like
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 blah. And then he started just tapping me out to the point where after class, I was like, I had to spend 30 minutes being like, do that move on me again. And I had to keep doing it until I figured out how to counter that move. Because I'm like, how is this little kid tapping me out? And
Right.
not even muscle.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So now I know that. If I speak to like a woman or like an elderly person in real life and like they bump me, or like I bump them. No, no, no. Yeah, I bump them and I'm like, oh, sorry. It's because I don't know, you know. And that's the thing about like jiu-jitsu where it's like, I don't know how good you are.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even want to test it because I know I could defend, but you might catch me. So it's like, let's just save that for the mats. Like, we want to train together, sure. But like,
Sure.
you know what I'm trying to say? It's
Yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
but that's what I think the piece would be if people all knew it, because then we'd all like second guess. Because we all know that experience of a smaller person tapping us out. So we're like, I don't know if you're actually much better than me. So we'll leave it alone.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if you don't know what that's like, and this is what I mean about the violence, if you don't know what that's like, then you're going to be like, well, I'm bigger. I'm going to punch you first.
Mm-hmm.
So then people get into fights, you know?
Yeah.
You could see that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like, being like the equalizer. If they, like, you get my point of view, right?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I get your point of view. Yeah.
You think it has legs, or you're like, I don't know.
It'd probably have to end up being like, how do you convince everyone to do it? And it has to be part of a curriculum kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, they do that in like schools. Like, they have judo in all through high school for Japanese people,
Mm-hmm.
wrestling in America. Like, I feel like even though most people are like martial arts are violent, I think they're a necessary evil in order to keep the peace. It's like the stronger, like, why do you have nukes? Because you're afraid that the person will use the nuke, and that's why you don't drop the nuke.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you keep things civil because somebody has a bigger weapon than you.
Yep.
You know, like, weapons keep the peace, even though people don't like that realization,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Yeah. Um. Okay. Speaking of, what time we at?
yeah. 1 hour, 4 minutes.
Okay, cool. Speaking of like weapons and all that, so I was listening to a CIA dude, and this like ties into what
Sure.
we were talking about at the
Yeah.
beginning. Um, he was talking about, so he uses CIA tactics for business now, and he's become like a prominent business person, and like he's just going over CIA tactics. And what he said was, we all innately know all of these things, like some of us do, but we don't know if we're the only ones feeling them. However, the CIA people also know these things, and they've ramped it up and like made it like cohesive enough in order to teach it to others and be like, this is a real thing. So so I'm going to go through the things with you, and you're going to realize like, oh yeah, this is totally what we talk about. Because I was listening to him like, that's what we talk about. That's what we talk about. So they're real things. So moral flexibility is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's not right to kill people. Most people will think that,
Yeah, yeah.
right? But what if you need to save someone?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, there is no real good and bad. There's only perspectives.
Yeah.
Right? So the CIA will teach you that, and that's what makes a good spy, because it's like, well, you're doing it for your country. You know what I'm saying? And they teach you how to like master these tricks that naturally come to certain people in order to effectively get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing, I don't know if you've used this, but I used one quite a bit. I didn't even know what I was doing, but like I will use questions to direct the conversation. So most people think if I'm asking you a question, they're directing because you're giving me all the answers. I'm speaking most. It's like, no, no, no. You're speaking the most because I'm making you speak the most.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah,
in order to
yeah,
have an engaging conversation, you're like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, what did you do with that? Oh, how do you,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know what I mean? But these are all tactics again that like the CIA employs. And then the one major thing that really stuck out to me is the person, the interviewer asked him, what is one truth that you once held but now do not believe? And he said, equality. And I'm starting to realize that now too. And I was like, dude, you're right. Because you even said before, remember, you're like, we need cogs. We need,
Yeah,
like, to
yeah.
go back to the beginning of the conversation too, it's like, you need those people that kind of move things around. Because if we're all the same, we wouldn't actually be cohesive as a unit. There's certain people that push the boundary and then we make us move a little in this direction. But you need the cogs and like the masses in order to actually move something.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing about equality is like we don't want actual equality. We want more of the same. No, we want more resources for us.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's true. Right? Because it's like, I don't actually care if you look at me equal. I just want the same pay.
Right.
Right? I don't actually care if you like the skin color of me or not. I just want that job.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to get into this thing. I just want blah, 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 blah. It's like we care actually more about the resources than actual equality.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't even, he didn't say this part, but like, we don't actually understand what being equal is. Because we
Right.
can't be equal. We are not all equal naturally. Right? Like, one's taller, one's shorter, one's smarter, one's more creative, one's faster. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think?
No, I agree.
That's a good point, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, yeah, we don't like equality doesn't actually make sense because none of us are equal.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, what do we really want? Just more resources because we feel like we're lacking.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. And if you put it like that, that's what he said was like when you start to understand how people work, then you start manipulating them in a specific direction because you know what their motives are, right? But like, yeah, it was like a breath of fresh air that somebody said what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Because like it seemed like for a while there that we were both like people are confused,
Right, right, right.
you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But you right, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't if you're listening to this podcast and you're like, no, but it is equality. It's like, what do you mean though? Like I just like explain it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But then maybe we can never be equal. If we look at it like this, it's like one of the things we have to accept.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that sucks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I was born in Africa with no food. Everyone's dying around me. But what am I gonna do with that? You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, that's just life.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Yeah. It's almost like you can only focus on your but that's why it's like you can only focus on your sphere of influence, not the world. Like forget about the world. Just focus on your world. You know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In a way.
So what are you thinking? You're like in a
No,
way. So
no,
like you think it's
no.
wrong?
No, 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 that's not. Nothing's wrong because again, the right and wrong thing is subjective.
Moral flexibility. It's like yeah.
Yeah, so like yeah, like there's churches that do things that want to help communities in Africa or things like that, or other religious
Mm.
organizations that do that, right? Um, there's some I think in the Muslim religion zakat or something where there's a portion of their uh, money goes to helping the needy, right? That's part of their
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
structure, right? So there's things like that, but again, that's
But I would say I would argue that that's in your sphere of influence. Like that is like you were born
true.
into that religion. All right, donate that amount. Oh, you're Christian. You want to do missionary work. Like yeah, but to put that onus on everyone else seems unfair.
No, no, yeah, yeah. I
Or
think
like
Exactly. I think,
Impossible.
but no, no. I think what I was trying to say is that those things exist is because the world has always been an unequal level. That's why those things have to
Right.
exist.
Right. No, that's true too. Like if somebody said this before, and I was like, this is a genius way of putting it. Like it's an existential crisis if you get what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean is, okay, starving kids in Africa. Okay, we create this missionary. We're gonna go there. Let's say you solve that problem. Now you guys don't have a job. Or like diversity, right? Oh, we want to make sure that 60% of our workforce is diverse. Well, that means you got to fire a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, do
Yeah.
you really want these things? Do you really want equality? Or do you want like the brochure of equality?
Mm-hmm.
The brochure of like these ideas that are not fully thought through, like Terrence Howard's thing. It's like this is what I mean about like level one, two, three. You're like most people are level one, bro. Like equality, justice, understanding. It's like now you go to the next level. What does that actually mean?
Right.
And
Exactly.
then next level, geez, is that even possible?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that one, two, three level thing is gonna like stick with me forever because it's so true, right? It's so like accurate. You hear people with like these boilerplate statements that are just regurgitated. You know, everyone's gotta be the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. That's level one, bro. But like, what would that entail? Level two.
Right.
And then they haven't even thought that far.
Yeah.
And then if you attain that level three, do you want that?
Mm.
And you're like, oh no, actually that would unravel everything we do.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But the world's running off level one. So it's like we
Well,
need
yeah.
yeah,
It
who has time,
depends.
who cares, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the
Going back
thing.
to all those things, it's like but like it would be more agreeable to my way of life if you would at least take a pause to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, of
You
course.
know, because then it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Yeah.
now we're not like now I don't seem like a jerk for being like equality doesn't really make sense. Diversity doesn't really make sense. You know? Like
But I think.
I'm gonna go on record. Yeah, yeah.
But I think that's corrections happen. There will be things that will go, but it'll only reach to a certain level. Then you realize, oh, this doesn't actually work, right? We're in the level phase, like phase one or level one of these topics are being brought up, right? But then once you try to incorporate them, it doesn't exactly work, right?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah.
So
And yeah.
that's like in other conditions, even ruling like standards and stuff. Yeah, you got standards, but practicality doesn't always work in that sense.
Yeah, to
So
100%.
that
Yeah, yeah,
has to
yeah.
be understood as well.
Idealism.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like ideal for this, but it's like, but you know, we need the
Practically,
rigor of the
exactly.
mathematics. So we need to like look at it, bro. Like, does this actually make sense?
Yeah.
And like one thing that I find, and I'm gonna go on record saying this, that I think it's funny when when a non-BIPOC person tries to tell a BIPOC person about diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can't make the presentation, you can't ram it down our throats because you are at that level one at that point. If you are a non-diverse, if you are a what's another word for non-BIPOC? A white person. If you're a white person telling a colored person about inclusivity and diversity, that in itself is a hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can't actually have a diverse team or like a diverse platform if nobody on your platform is diverse.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And yet we have a system that's obsessed with adding this in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I truly feel that and wait, hold on. So I'm not the only one that feels this. A lot of scientists are saying that there's a lot of there's an implosion of in the American system right now because of this incorrect ideology. Okay. And it could be like a psyop from a different country trying to like demoralize your society and like crumble it from the inside out. Maybe, I don't know. But what I'm saying is that I agree that there is this implosion. So what I think the loophole is if you want to talk about diversity and if you want to, I'm trying to be as like nice as possible to say this. If you want to talk about diversity, but you aren't diverse, you can get in through the loophole of things that we can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Pronouns and sexuality. I was having this conversation with somebody like, yeah, but they are diverse. And I'm like, right, but you can't see sexuality, but you can see skin color.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like they're like using that as a loophole to get in on this agenda when it's like,
Yeah, these
bro,
are
nobody, am I
yeah,
trying to date you, bro?
right.
I'm not trying to date you, right? So I don't care about your like sexuality.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah,
It's not, you know what I'm saying?
yeah. That's for your
But they're
the dating profiles, not for.
that's what I mean. It's like, but that's how they're getting in. And then this is why I think people are misunderstood with this inclusion thing, because it's like, okay, you're trying to champion diversity, but it's like you're not looking at the fundamentals, which is like skin and race, bro.
Mm-hmm.
You're jumping in with like what I identify as. You're like, oh my god, all right, well I can't see what you identify as. We can walk down the street, and if you identify as black, but there's an actual black person, I'm gonna look to the black person, not you. I'm not gonna be like, oh, maybe they identify as a black person. You know what I'm saying? And that's why you get a lot of videos that are like making fun of this right now, because I think we all see it, but not everyone's seeing it. Like the majority is like in the level one of like diversity, diversity,
Exactly.
but then like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
us who see it, we're poking fun at it because it's
Mm-hmm.
like it actually doesn't make any sense,
Yeah, yeah.
you know? And I think this could really be a detrimental downfall to Western society. And
Okay. Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
I'll let you bring in what your thought, and then I'm gonna share
Um.
something interesting.
Yeah. No, I think that if it's a detriment, then it'll affect business in this sense. It'll affect
Mhm.
profits, right?
But
Uh,
it is affecting business, hiring practices, HR practices. It is, and that's why a lot of academics are saying like this is an implosion right now.
right. Well, we'll see if that's true or not, because
Mhm.
well, under the American system, right? They're still the top economy in this time right now.
Okay, excellent. You perfectly segued into what I was about to say. So the CIA guy, he said he believes we're in a World War III. I'm gonna make these cuts because they're so genius. He thinks that we're in a World War III right now, but we're not. What we're seeing, what we imagined as a world war, is not what we're getting, and that's why we don't think we're in a World War III.
Mm-hmm.
So what he said is we're already fighting a proxy war. So that's technically a war. Like
Sure.
US is
Right.
funding this, and then this other countries. We're not fighting on the battlefield country for country. We're taking smaller countries and we're fighting proxy wars,
Sure.
which is like very accurate, right? We fund them with our weapons and they fight for us. It's not actually like,
Yeah. Yeah.
all
Yeah.
right, do you agree or disagree with that first point?
Uh, it would be a proxy war. I think that I'm trying to think what that means because it's the Russia who invaded,
No,
right? It's not.
yes, yes, but literally proxy war is like, I like by proxy, like in place of.
No, 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 I get that.
So
But we're
yeah,
not. Again, we're not putting any of our lives at risk, right? It's Ukrainians'
that's
lives.
why it's proxy war. But that's why it's a proxy war. It's in place of us. We will fund you to do our fighting.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get that. But the war is Russia who did the invasion, right? So,
Yeah, for sure.
but the
So you,
proxy it changes too because I know what you're saying with the proxy war, but that's we were giving him the funding, and then the funding did deplete a bit, right? There was an issue. That's why they've
hmm
gained. Russia has gained ground. So I don't know like
hmm
what the level is like. What is the encouragement within the U.S. government to continue funding?
okay. The next, so he didn't just name that one. He's like, there's all these battles happening that are all proxy wars, and you'll agree with this one, Taiwan,
Yeah.
because you were saying like the microchips, right?
Oh, right. Yeah.
And it's like we're not fighting them directly, but we're helping them to fight off because we need you to stay who you are.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't get into battle. So it's a proxy war. It's like,
There's a few other things I
I'll
want
help
to add
you.
about the chip thing.
Taiwan thing? Okay, cool. All right, we'll go into right after this.
Okay.
Okay, or right now. Go ahead, right now.
No, you
Is it
finish.
like related?
Yeah, it's all related about the chip. There are fail safes. There are things that are
Okay.
risks for China if they go in, because I heard that there's only one company that makes the machine that makes the chips, and it's in Taiwan is where they bought those machines. So that it's Netherlands, I think, that make those machines, but
Okay.
Taiwan uses those machines to make those chips in a very huge scale, right? As well as South Korea, I think. But there is a failsafe. What I've heard is if China was to attack Taiwan, that they do have a key destruction
No.
for those machines so that they don't get them.
That's crazy. See, it's war. That's like, yeah, man, that's straight up. Like the fact that you built that in is like you're already thinking. So this is what the CIA guy was saying. It's like we are in World War III. We just don't think of it.
I don't think it's called
It's
World War
not playing
III.
out.
I think this
No,
is.
it's no,
I
no,
think
but
it's a Cold War.
uh, yeah, okay. I could see that too. Sure. Sure. Okay. You're calling it Cold War. He's calling it World War III. It's just not what he's saying is that it's not what we thought it was going to look like because it's mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
Like literally, if we go to like what it was World War II,
Yeah.
it's game over for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't want that. So that's why he said like
Exactly.
World War III
Yeah,
is this.
Yeah.
Right. But you're right. It's a Cold War. We're all like in a standoff. It's an arms race right now, but it's like a chip race, not really an arms race. But then the other part that he said, which I was like, oh, this is actually really interesting, is how it's going to play out. Because we are always wondering, like, well, if there's an overturning of the superpower, and what he said was like, USA is very youthful right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like it doesn't have thousands of years of like development. So what he's saying is we're watching its adolescent stage of like development. It's becoming a teenager, and you're like, ooh, that's the pitfalls of that, you know. And what he was saying is that what might happen in the very near future is China and USA will be almost on par economically, with one just slightly above the other. And then as time moves forward, it's like then they'll switch and they'll go back and forth. And he thinks that that's what it will look like. But the problem with that is like, then you have to decide where do you want to put your currency? What's the language of business? Is it Mandarin? Is it English? Do I get the yuan? Do I get the dollar? And that's actually more detrimental, like en masse, because you have a lot of like up and downness with the economy.
Mm-hmm.
But he's like, we're about to enter into that. He's actually moving to Europe or South America because he's like, it's about to like crumble in America. It's about to get dicey in America, right? By 2030, he was saying. And do you see that too? It's like if they have two superpowers vying for power, not like a hot war, but like economically, okay, for 5 years, China's on top. And then it switches. Okay, USA's on top. But it's like, but what does our money look like in that up and down swing,
Right.
Things are costing more, et cetera, et
Sure.
cetera.
Yeah.
And I think that's like pretty viable. When he said that, I was like, oh, I hadn't heard somebody explain it like that before. But that seems most realistic than like there's nuclear bombs that are just going to go off. Like, remember we were both like, I really don't see mutually assured destruction. But there is an economic element to this that for sure will play out. Agreed? Or
Yeah.
yeah, I think yeah, I think that'll be the most realistic. But like, I feel like we're all going to feel it in our lives due to the amount of money we have to spend. But then it's like, where do we go from here? Like, so many people are like having a hard time living. You can't have everybody in poverty.
Yeah, no.
You know?
Right.
So it's like What's the way out? Unless we just become like one super governance system. I don't know, gas prices are crazy, rent's crazy.
Yeah, yeah,
Do you like, is this like enslavement? Or are we just going to become like
yeah.
fully economically enslaved? You know what I mean?
uh,
Like, what is the outcome? I'm like, I don't know. I just don't see it anymore. I'm just like, are we just going to become like literally slaves to our finances? I don't know.
I I don't know if this is necessarily like a new thing. That's why it's gone in the 80s. I've heard it's similar to what's going on. I'm talking about the
Right now?
economy wise, gas prices and house prices. Even at that time, it was something similar. So
Oh, really? Oh, but relative to how much we were making. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
No, but see, the thing that everyone says is like we didn't make any more money. Like the income is outpacing the cost, and that's our real problem now. At least back then, it was like, okay, it's kind of relative, but like we haven't really moved too much in terms of income, and yet our prices are going up. So it's more like you're you're
But I
like
think there's
treading water, and the
there's
water's
different
getting higher.
yeah, there was also differences then too because they didn't have as many I would say expenses or bills in that sense. What I mean by that is there was no such thing as cell phones. So they didn't have to pay phone bills. They didn't have internet, so they didn't have internet bills,
Yeah, true.
right? So we
Mm.
have technically more money than then, but we're just spending it more on all these bills that we didn't have before.
Right, 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 right. But okay, so if that's the case, then it goes back to the economic enslavement because you're like you still have to pay these things
Yeah, yeah,
with
sure.
like little money, you know? Like they not even the cost of things, but like you said, it's like you have to pay for more things. But
No, no,
it's
I'm
not like
saying yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
jumped. Yeah.
I get it, yeah. But that means technically we have more money than that time because we're able to pay for those other things as well. They didn't have those things at those times, right? So
Okay, yeah, no, no, I see what you're saying. Yeah, they didn't have like streaming services, Wi-Fi services,
yeah.
internet. Like, yeah, 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 totally. But okay, for sure. But I don't think it was as bad as it is now because we don't see the ramifications of debt enslavement back then into now. You know what I mean? Like people were able to buy houses, not have debt, but like I just don't like how are you gonna buy a $2 million house, bro?
Mm-hmm.
Makes no sense.
Right.
Like like 20 years from now, your kid's gonna be like, oh, you still owe that $20 million house. You know what I mean? Whereas like before it was like 12,000 or like 100,000 or like you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it might have looked similar, but I feel like the enslavement is actually happening now because how do you get out of that debt?
Yeah. There's the issue is yeah, the house thing is a different issue where there's too much population, not enough production.
Okay.
That's what causes the increase in house prices because you have more bidding,
Yeah, like supply and demand.
supply and demand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So the only way to really affect that is to either slow down immigration and catch up on building houses to level that off. Because you can't bring down the price from what it is now, right? You can't bring it down. You can only level it off.
Exactly. Wait, wait, hold on, wait, wait. But so then even if you build more houses, you're still gonna be charging like $1 million. Because like you said, it's like you can't bring it down. You have to level it off. It's just like gas prices,
Mm-hmm.
right? When those prices rose, I was like, oh, that's the new normal. It will never trickle down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It'll
yeah.
level itself,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And like, but if it's leveling itself off, it's still gonna be worth $1 million. What are we gonna do with that?
Yeah. So leveling itself
Who's
off.
gonna make $1 million, bro?
Yeah, yeah. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, the only way. Yeah, your income has to grow.
Increase.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But how? And I really think that this is like this is it, which is like enslavement, economic enslavement.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just unintentional. Like it kind of worked out this way because you will never be able to pay off that debt. Or just don't own the house, just rent.
Yeah.
But even renting is pretty expensive,
Yeah.
But like
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
how it's like they said at the Davos thing, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Maybe.
Because it really does seem like it's hitting that point. Ooh, Tara just came home and I didn't hear that she's gonna come home. All right, just quick pause.
Yeah.
Okay, back. Yeah, we gotta wind it down.
Yeah.
Ran a bit too long. So, what were you saying with the?
I don't know where I was.
Okay, that's fine. I did have like one philosophical thing I did want to ask you, but I feel like it'll just be
Take too long.
too long.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But you did bring something up at the end of last week's podcast that I thought was super interesting, which is the oil embargo in World War II, Japan.
Yeah, that's what Japan.
Hey, you relating it to chips now?
Yeah. That's
Like
what I
with
felt.
yeah.
Yeah, they felt that oil embargo was impeding their progress. But at this point, they already had a lot of other places too, right? They've already gone into China and everything. So the oil embargo at that time, once it took in effect, I guess this is impeding our progress. So the only way they felt was retaliation, which is a surprise attack on the United States.
Yeah, right. The Pearl Harbor thing.
Yeah. So
whereas like it's level 1, 2, and 3 again. We thought it was like level 1, like good versus evil, then the level 2, then the level 3. Go ahead.
Yeah, and they give that definition, they give that explanation in the Pearl Harbor Museum as to why Japan attacked. So they're not hiding it, right?
No, they're not hiding it. But
right.
again, who looked into that, right? So it's like the level 1.
Sure.
If you ask anybody, you're like, oh, good versus evil, right?
Right.
I'm assuming it's like some sort of, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the level 1.
Right. I feel like that could be a reason for today's thing is about chips. Who has the highest? I don't know if I sent you this video. I watched a few videos where it's like one who has the technological power. They're the ones who are in the lead. They're the ones who take over, control of the world, kind of sense, right? So that is the United States.
Yeah.
All the best designs come from the United States. Any new design that the improvements that happen, they're coming from the United States, and they have that connection. So they're now building. I don't want to give too much into it, but they're building manufacturing plants in the United States to build those chips now, so that they also have it secure that it's now it's inside of the United States versus leaving it to in U.S. and South Korea and Japan. And I think that's also part of the progress that happened to those three countries. The progress that they went through was because they allowed them to manufacture there. So their technology increased in those countries because of...
You're talking about South Korea,
Taiwan, and Japan. The increase happened because they did the manufacturing plants there, so that they were able to learn chip technology and all that stuff. So that helped the progress of those countries as well.
Which is totally viable, or like it totally makes sense because
which helped their economy grow.
I keep bringing up the airport.
Yeah,
totally. And I keep bringing up the airport because like I really got to see the country, but just the robotics was like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And it makes sense though. It's like you guys have all the chips and like you've been manufacturing the chips, so you can play around with like the technology. It's just interesting that it's like we're moving away from oil as the main currency for what we need, or like the main resource that the world needs, towards chips.
Yeah, and even with the oil thing, I don't people don't really know this, but U.S. has been drilling more than ever before, so they have their own supply.
Oh wow!
They're actually exporting more out, like helping the Europe and
probably
stuff
because
than they need, right? So it's like, and they're they still have good allies.
Well, why are gas prices still high?
Because
why are gas prices still high?
Actually, it's more
the leveling off.
it's more controlled in the United States because they did when he released more of the oil within. So I don't think it's as high as here, but also oil is connected to its OPEC, right? So
what's OPEC?
like the different countries that are involved in the oil control of oil production. If you reduce your production, you want to increase your prices. So, and then because also Russia's out of the oil thing, right? Because they can't sell it to anybody. So that less supply,
Right.
so increase in prices.
Right. It's funny. I was like, again, supply demand. It's so basic. Like everything's so basic. It's just like if you just have a little bit of it, and then people pay more for it because they'll need it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And this is,
and
this is why
we're
it's so
still not back
expensive.
to like what it used to be before, right? Like there's still a lot of people working from home, so less people are driving.
Yeah.
So the prices go up,
I,
right?
yeah.
In that sense.
I really think that like it. I mean, they've been saying this, but if you really think about it, it actually totally makes sense. It's like the next thing that's gonna like bolster up a country is its chip development because we can find an alternative fuel source, but we won't find alternative ways to create technology that we've already created.
Mm-hmm.
We all need microchips. That's how we power everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a microchip in like everything, you know?
Yeah. I don't know if I showed you in that clip where, because even there's a chip embargo with Russia, right? So, they were using, breaking down fridges, microwaves, getting those
Oh,
chips
wow.
for their weapons.
That's crazy. Wow.
So
That's desperate though. But it's funny because it's like it's like wow, that really is like that is the new oil. Chips are the new oil.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. But like really though,
yeah,
because like you will need it for everything.
Yeah.
Wild. All right, that's a sad way to end this, but what can you do? Uh,
We're in a Cold War.
yeah, for sure. And like we are moving towards a technological future with chips at the forefront. And if you don't believe in tech, you're just Delulu. This is making no sense, bro. That's like, no, we are going to move forward with tech no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways, all right. So next week, no podcast, right? Because I'm busy Saturday, you're busy Sunday.
Busy. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the week after that is still up in the air. So potentially no podcast for 2 weeks. Yeah. But stay tuned.
Mm-hmm.
Until next time. Take easy, Vish.
Peace.
Bye. All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, all those fun things, and check out our sponsors, Zenro Clothing Co., Portian Bakery, and Podbean. Take it easy, Vish.
Peace.